Mr. Reedling.
Alright, let's talk about Wublin farming. This is the best way of earning diamonds in Mining and Monsters, and it will enable you to get a higher diamond income than all the mini mines combined. So a year ago I made a video specifically about Zynth farming, but it's no longer relevant due to Zynth getting nerfed quite a lot. So this video is sort of a remake of that one, but I will include many different strategies for diamond farming, depending on what kind of player you are. Interestingly enough, Zynth farming is still the best way of earning diamonds for most players in Mining and Monsters, and I'll get to this in a bit. I have made sure to cover a lot of stuff in this video, so I guarantee that after watching it you will never need to watch any video about Wublin Island strategy again, unless Big Blue Bubble changed completely everything. So let's get into it. So for those who are new to Mining and Monsters, the Wublins is basically a category of monsters that can be found on Wublin Island. And they work differently from your average monster in that they can produce 4 different types of currency: coins, food, shards and diamonds. For the first 3 currency types, Wublins have the ability to give you a modest income, but there are much better alternatives for farming each of these currency types. Where Wublins shine the brightest though is with their diamond production. Each Wublin can produce 2 to 5 diamonds depending on its size and how difficult it is to wake up, meaning that the Wublin that produces the least diamonds is Zynth, and the one that produces the most is your mom. The best way to get the most diamonds should then be to get as many of the monsters with the highest percentage of giving you diamonds. The monsters with the highest percentage are also bigger in size. Since the bigger monsters take up more space on the island, it means that you can't fit as many of them. So what's actually important is not the actual diamond percentage, but how that relates to the amount of tiles that the Wublin takes up. According to this, the Wublin which scores the best is Tympa, with an estimated chance of giving you diamonds at 7.56%. However, there is also another factor that we need to bring up, which is often overlooked, and that is the difficulty of getting each Wublin. Trying to create a full Tympa farm as a beginner in Mining and Monsters is an utter waste of time. It's much better, if you're new to the game, to instead farm a much easier Wublin and to later on replace that with a Tympa farm. So let's get into the most simple strategy that I have prepared for you guys, and this one is completely geared towards beginners and is suitable for those of you who own Plant Island, Cold Island and maybe a few other islands. It is to simply wake up 1 or a few grumps. In this stage of the game, diamonds isn't all we care about, and the other types of currency are much more valuable than they get later on, especially shards, which you wouldn't get access to in any other way this early. I wouldn't at all recommend getting a Wublin farm this early in the game, just get a few grumps and then focus on other stuff. Going forward, we have the next strategy, and that is to simply get the full Wublin Island song. If you aren't a super sweaty player, this strategy is pretty good for you. You don't have to go full farm mode to gain benefit from Wublin Island. The full song gives you a good amount of diamonds by itself. However, if you want to farm a specific Wublin, the one that I think would be most beneficial for most players is Zynth. You might be a little confused right now, thinking that Zynth was flushed down the drain and that you should only get Tympas now. But if you actually look at the Wublin inventories, and not only on the diamond chances, you would see that it takes the same time to create 1 Tympa farm as it takes to create 20 Zynth farms. If we calculate how many diamonds a full Zynth farm would give you, it's 16 diamonds a day. And that's if you collect your currency twice a day. For a Tympa farm it will be 34 diamonds a day. So you really need much more effort to create a Tympa farm than a Zynth farm. I would recommend a Zynth farm over a Tympa farm for these following players: those who have not unlocked the magical islands, those who do not own all 5 mirror islands, and those who do not own the breeding structures on the 5 natural islands as well as on their mirror counterparts. For these players, it will literally take 1130 days to complete a full Tympa farm, as compared to 57 days for a Zynth farm. To make this more simple for you, I have prepared 3 different breeding charts for Zynths. The upper one is the simplest. It only includes the basic islands and no bonus structures or mirror islands. It lets you get 1 Zynth per breeding interval, or 2 Zynths a day if you breed twice a day. The middle one is a little bit more complex and also includes the bonus structures. With this you can get 2 Zynths per interval or 4 Zynths a day. This last one is the advanced guide, which has both bonus structures and the mirror islands and lets you get a whopping 8 Zynths a day, meaning that if you follow it, you can finish your Zynth farm in just 13.5 days. To bring out the full effect of your Zynth farm, you need to fill as many tiles of the island as possible. Wublin Island houses 496 tiles in total, and using this guide on the screen, you can place a maximum amount of 113 Wublins on the island. Because Wublin Island has a pretty weird shape, it's not entirely made for farming and there will be some empty space left. So 3 of the monsters can be replaced with 3 extreme monsters that produce diamonds at a higher rate than Zynths. The obvious pick for the 3 extreme monsters is Wubrolls, and they produce diamonds at roughly a 9% chance. An alternative to the full Zynth farm is the Wublin Island hybrid farm, and that is essentially a farm which includes the full song but fills out the rest of the space with Zynths. However, as I said, Zynth farming isn't optimal for every player, and if you are a quote-unquote advanced player, which I have defined as owning all magical islands, the mirror islands, as well as bonus structures on all of them, you have enough breeding capacity for a Tympa farm to be better. That will decrease the time to complete the farm from 1130 days to 245 days, which is still a lot, but it's a big difference. We can calculate the diamonds produced by a full Tympa farm, and that's 34 diamonds a day or 1025 diamonds a month. Even for advanced players, I would actually recommend getting the Zynth farm before your Tympa farm and then instantly replacing it with Tympas once you're finished. That way you'll earn way more diamonds than if you would start from scratch. A Zynth farm only takes 14 days with this breeding capacity, and still produces half of that of a Tympa farm. But then again, you will definitely benefit from the higher diamond production of Tympas in the long term, despite the effort. I also made a breeding chart for Tympas. It only includes the advanced chart because you have no reason to get Tympas otherwise. As I stated, by following this chart, your Tympa farm will be finished in 245 days, if you breed twice a day as intended. Also, since Tympa is the same size as a Zynth, all I said about wobbling grid planning also applies here. Another type of farming which is fairly common is pixelotl farming. Pixelotl is supposed to be as good to farm as Tympa according to some people, which is a fair argument because they cost the same in the shop. However, the data that's collected on the wiki, which is an estimate and not an absolute measurement, states that the percentages of getting diamonds for pixelotl is slightly lower than for Tympa. Because of this, I won't recommend getting a pixelotl farm for anyone. But since these numbers are just estimates, it is possible that pixelotl does indeed produce as many diamonds or even more diamonds than Tympa. Then again, it's more likely that this isn't true than true. An additional form of Wublin farming that I frequently see is monculus farming. But look out for this one. There are a bunch of posts online that state that monculus produces 4 diamonds per collection. This actually used to be true, and for a short period of time, monculus was insanely overpowered and the best monster to farm on Wublin Island by far. However, it's gotten nerfed to producing 2 diamonds per collection, so don't be fooled by these old posts claiming that monculus is a good monster to farm, because it isn't. Now, there's a concept that I need to explain to you, and that is polarity. Polarity is a fairly recent addition to Wublin Island. it is a feature that makes it so that the Wublin's production rates increase or decrease depending on what monsters they are placed adjacent to. The reason I didn't bring up polarity earlier in the video is because you likely don't need to give a shit about it. Polarity is initially a confusing subject, but I can simplify it like this. All that polarity really does is it increases or decreases the speed of diamond production with 25%, which for a neutral Wublin is 6 to 12 hours. Polarity doesn't actually increase the chances or the amount of diamond the monster produces, which means that unless you log into the game more than twice a day, you don't even gain any benefit from positive polarity. However, if you log in twice a day, you should ideally avoid negative polarity. Although, if you're an insane person and you log into minting monsters and collect your currency more than twice a day, there's actually another strategy which will increase your diamond income even more than the Tympa farm I mentioned. If you replace the 3x3 monsters that in the original strategy are drum rolls with poevks, 19 of the Tympas will get affected by a positive polarity effect. If you log into the game more than twice a day, this is thus going to give you a higher income than the neutral Tympa farm, approximately 34.7 diamonds a day. But note that if you do not collect your currency more than twice a day, this farm will be slightly worse than the original Tympa drumroll farm. There's also another polarity farm out there that tries to get as many of the Tympas polarized as possible, which is 83 of the 85 Tympas, which has been estimated to be like 1% better than the last strategy if you log into the game very frequently. Again, you're objectively insane if you would choose this over the original Tympa drumroll farm. I'm just stating options here. The last feature of Wublin Island, which is relevant to strategy, is that there are rare Wublins now. The difference between rares and commons is that rares produce an additional diamond per collection. Diamond chances seem to be the same as for their common counterparts, and from a strategical perspective, rare Wublins aren't that important. It's because of their costing keys and because of their difficult inventories of rare monsters that can only be filled up during special events. Furthermore, you can only get 3 rares of each monster type, which means that you can't get an entire Tympa farm of rares. So I mostly recommend getting the rare Wublins for your collection only. You can farm them, but I wouldn't recommend it unless you have nothing else to complete in the game. Alright guys, that was all I had to cover in this video. I hope that you learned something interesting here. Like the video if you want to see similar stuff in the future. Also, go and check out my other strategy videos. I'm sure you'll learn something there too. Bye!